Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to the weekend preview. Hopefully you enjoyed last night's cracker where the Cats got up. I was lucky enough to get along to that game. Pretty intense towards the end, but good to see the Cats get up. As far as SuperCoach goes, we'll discuss a few of the talking points. And there aren't too many, just a couple of little bits and pieces. But I do think this week, the last few, I've stressed that we should be using our two trades, upgrading, downgrading. I think the way the stars have aligned this time around, I think it's probably time to sit on our hands for an extent, at least for the week, and maybe just hold a couple of trades, maybe one if necessary, but certainly I think unless there's a premium who's dropped down that you really want to get a hold of, I think there's nothing really shouting out to get them at this stage, so I think there will be next week. So before I get into it, I should talk about Aaron Sandilands, who of course is out. Nick Rewald also out. Gary Ablett is also out. Fraser McInnes as well has been dropped. A few people would have been thinking he would be their downgrade option, and hopefully no one fell into that fateful trap, making an early week trade. And with the Thursday game, you won't be able to reverse the trade, so hopefully no one fell into that trap. But other than that, just scanning through the teams now, of course Hampton is out, which we knew. You obviously got to offload him. That's a no-brainer. Probably should have already. Other than that, just looking through, it doesn't seem like there's anything absolutely coming off the page for me. A couple of guys come in for their first game, Kunico, and a couple of Hawks, and I think Timmy English as well was named. So maybe a few cash cows in a couple of weeks' time. But Sandilands is probably the big talking point because I think he is the most popular player out of those few guys I mentioned. I think Rewalt would hurt a couple, maybe Ablett a couple, but Sandilands is the one. And if you can use your dual position and get Nan Curvis from a forward line to a ruck position, by all means do that. But if you've got Preuss on the bench, which many people do, he has been named on the extended bench for North Melbourne. Now, of course, we won't know those teams till later tonight. I think they generally come out, is it 5:25? I think it's about 5:25. If not, it'll be just after 6. So keep an eye out for those. North Melbourne's extended bench is Jed Anderson, Andrew Swallow, Luke McDonald, Ryan Clark, Trent Dumont, Sean Atley and Preuss. So a pretty strong bench there. Of course, he comes in alongside Dumont and Anderson. I wouldn't have thought Clark would get picked. Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought Anderson would get picked, but he's right in the frame. I think he probably will be named emergency again. So let's talk about it as if he isn't playing. Now, it then comes down to a personal opinion and preference. Can you cop a zero? Can you afford to cop a zero? Do you like, or no one likes copping a zero, but can you live with it? I know some people, if we do think Sandilands is just the 1 week that they are saying, of course, the talk out of Fremantle is that it's just a 1 weeker, it's just pulled up a bit tight. But this is Aaron Sandilands, I don't think we can trust anything like that. I don't think he's ever just missed 1 week. So it'll be interesting how they play it. Fremantle's bye situation, they have the bye in round 13. So, if he does, it would have been great if, say it was round 11 or whatever. It would have made it a bit easier because you would have been without him or, sort of thing. The byes do come up quickly. I know you only have to have 18 scorers, which will help some people, but I'm wary of copping a zero this week. I don't like doing that at all. And I also don't think, and some of you may be in the same boat, I cannot afford to carry too many players through the byes. I think I've got enough guys who just aren't playing anyway on my bench, let alone a guy who's priced around the 470k. So I really don't think that should be an option. If you can afford it, by all means. If you're happy to cop a zero and then save a trade, by all means do that, because people will say once you get to the byes, you can afford to carry blokes like that. Look, he hasn't been an out-and-out premium. He's averaging solid numbers in the mid-90s, which has been really good. But I think we always pick Sandilands with the view of trading him out. So I think, for me, he will be traded out. And I've got Steph Martin in my sights. He's nicely priced. I think he's about another 50 or 60k above. He's shown really consistent form. I think he just had 1 poor week. Other than that, he's been really good. Of course, Gawn isn't around. Goldstein, he'll tempt a couple. I mean, what's he priced at the moment? Let me just check. 5.19. So he's about around your Martin range, and he's averaging 96.3 and has a break even of 63. So I think if you're sold on Goldstein, he's sort of gone off a little bit in popularity, I suppose, because of that Preuss factor, and he just hasn't been playing as well, not as dominant, but his form has lifted. Of course, last week he was outstanding. So it really does come down to how your team is looking, how you can cover a zero, how many guys you can afford to carry through the buys. Some people may be holding on to a Rockcliffe or things like that. So I feel like that's something to think about. I personally, pretty sure I'll be going to Martin, but 100% sure if Preuss isn't named, Sandilands will go. So at the moment, we'll just talk about it as if he's not going to be named. And I would encourage you, if you can't dual position Nank into the ruck division, I would not like to be copying a zero. It's just frustrating, puts you behind the 8 ball immediately. So I think that's the main talking point in regards to that. If we have to talk, like I said off the top, trades and things like that, and maybe saving a couple, the reason I say is at the moment, if you're going to be downgrading, you're probably looking at guys like, say, Daniel Lloyd is probably one, and of course McGuinness was the other who has been dropped. But Daniel Lloyd, 117k, midfielder, averaging 50, break even a negative 32. I'm not really sold on it. He's a young giant. He's looked okay, but we know that their injury list is so long. So that's the only reason he's getting a game at the moment. I cannot see him lasting any more than 3 to 4 weeks. And therefore, at his scoring rate at the moment, I can't see him making us any more than 100k. So I really don't think he's a great option. And the reason I think you should bypass all options this week on the downgrade is because we've got a couple of beauties coming up next week. If Hugh Greenwood can continue his good form, I think that 100 is probably one out of the box. We'll hope that he can dish out a 70 or something like that. And then I think we'll be all over him because he's a forward mid, can really allow us to downgrade in either of those lines. So it should suit most people. And I think Scotty Selwood put himself right into the frame. I really didn't think he could produce these sort of numbers, and I wouldn't expect a 3-figure average from Scotty, but he's a tackling machine at the moment. It's what the Cats are loving. Another 17 last night, so I think he scored 112, so that's back-to-back tons, and I think he's just going to be a must-have, considering that we don't have a stack of cash cows that are jumping off the page, at least making quick coin. So I think he's about 280k. I didn't actually check, but probably for next week. That's why I say you may want to do the double downgrade next week. You will have 3 trades to work with, given it's the buy. So I think that will be helpful. You might be able to go down to Greenwood and maybe, of course, you don't as such go down to Scott Selwood, but you might want to, I rarely say it, sideways trade. If you've got, say, a Parfitt or a Harley Ballock or something like that, and your midfield bench is just looking a little scarce, then you might just want to spend a little 30k figure and get a scorer in, and a bloke who should quite quickly get his way up to 450. I mean, he's shown that he can score big in the past. I would doubt that we'd see those 104 averages again. I would probably think he's more capable of around that, somewhere in the 90s. So very good option if we're going to go anything by his first 2 weeks. So I think that's about wraps it up anyway. My advice would certainly be to assess your situation, really taking into consideration the buys, because we'll discuss that in detail next week. But I think it's definitely worth considering, even a week out, how your structures are looking, what you might be dealing with a week out, and it might just preference what guys you trade in and trade out and really make that final call a little bit easier. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for those finals teams tonight, because of course Preuss will be very important to many people's teams and really decide their trade structure this weekend. So once again, I appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, that'd be fantastic. And if you have been on board for a while, well, thank you. Give the video a like, give it a comment. I would doubt I'll get round to the comments, probably not too many anyway. Maybe if you get in early, I might be a sneaky chance, but no promises. Anyway, hopefully anything that you have a question on has been answered in this podcast. So once again, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you later.